There's a clicker here.
There's a clicker here?
Yep, so you come up here into this microphone facing here, and the PowerPoint will come up when you come up and you start using the clicker.
Yeah, that's fine. The PowerPoint
Yep,
on the screen.
and you'll see it, you'll be able to click it.
The Tuesday, February 5th, 2019 meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Open Podium is an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government before each City Council meeting, typically the first and third Tuesday of each month, from 6:30 to 6:55 p.m. in this council chamber. If you wish to speak at Open Podium, please contact the City Manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, phone number, and subject matter. It helps staff to be prepared and ready for your content or topic. If time permits, after scheduled speakers are finished, the mayor will open the floor to unscheduled speakers. Open Podium is not recorded or televised. If you have any questions about Open Podium, please contact the City Manager's office. So we have the next agenda items, approval of the agenda. Are there any items to add or question that are on the current agenda? Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further conversation, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have, I believe we can approve both minutes unless there's an issue or a question. Anyone have any concerns about either of the minutes? Is there a motion to approve both the council workshop and the city council meeting held on January 22nd?
Move to approve the council minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Is there a
Presentation.
what did I forget? Oh,
Or presentation.
I'm so sorry. You're sitting there going, I'm out here. This is really, really important and incredibly great news. And I asked you personally to come, I believe, and take your time. So I so apologize. Really appreciate you being here. We have amazing, I think, positive news. We survey our business community once every 3 years. So, Mr. Getchell, would you do formal introductions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. That's correct. Every 3 years, we do a survey of our businesses, and we use Morris Leatherman for that survey. So as the mayor was mentioning, as recently as last Thursday evening, there was a joint chamber city meeting last Thursday evening where the results were presented in that format that Mr. Peter Leatherman gave the results. And the mayor had asked that this might be something that the community might be interested in, and that a presentation at a future city council meeting could occur. So lo and behold, 5 days later, Mr. Leatherman is before us to present the business survey results for Eden Prairie.
Thank you so much for being here. I do
Wonderful.
apologize again.
It's truly a pleasure to finally get here this evening.
Yes, no kidding.
It was a long commute. Get the present. Oh, there we go. Excellent. All right, just to review what we undertook for the city, we spoke with 400 randomly selected owners and chief decision makers of businesses in the city of Eden Prairie. The calls were, we started after the election. We shut down for 2 weeks before the election because everybody was exhausted by being voter ID'd and political polling and everything. So the field work took place between November 13th and December 18th of last year. With the 400 sample, the plus or minus is plus or minus 5% in 95 out of 100 cases. The average completion time was 21 minutes, and the non-response rate, and with a wide, almost a month of field work, over half of these were set up by appointments. It's when it's convenient for the business owner or decision maker to take the survey, not when it's convenient for my phoners to give the survey. Because we don't want to have any inherent bias, especially, we do the same thing with residents when we're doing a residential survey, but with owners and decision makers, we have to do it this way. So just to start out, we start out and ask folks, what was the most important reason for locating your business in the city of Eden Prairie? And they could, it was a closed-ended list, and we could say if it was a very important, somewhat important, not too important, or not at all important reason. What I've arrayed on this chart, and for consistency as residents and the council review the survey, the 2018 results are the blue bars to help train your eye to that. And a lot of things went up over the course of time. We have now a decade's worth of comparison going back to 2008. And the gap we're looking for with a 400 sample, plus or minus 5%, anything greater than 6% is a statistically significant change. So a great place to live and work leads the list at 93%, a 14-point jump. Low crime rate jumped 7 points to 90%. Proximity to customers and suppliers went up 13 points this time. The fair value of lease and rental rates went up 21 points to 85% as a factor. Available building space went up 29 points. And there's oftentimes a marriage between those two items of the fair value and the availability of space. The highway access went up. Qualified workforce jumped up 11 points. Supportive city services, not statistically significant, but it did increase 5 points. So business owners and managers this time around were focused on a breadth of things. They could have said multiple things, and many of them did. Continuing with the list, the property tax rate in the city has always been a factor for 3/4, is that it's a competitive advantage when they compare to other cities. Internet access dropped from 2011 and now has remained stable at about 2/3 as a concern or consideration. Housing choices, always been about 65%. Similar types of businesses, up 19. And then the access to public transit stayed at the 40% level. The walking, parks, outdoor amenities dropped to 1/3. And then first time we asked entertainment opportunities. But there is you can see a clear hierarchy, but the hierarchy basically is about 10 items that have 3/4 of business owners and managers saying that it's at least somewhat important in the decision to move to Eden Prairie. Now, the grade of the city business climate, and I mentioned this with the chamber, and I mention this whenever I present across the state. This result is startling simply because Minnesotans are not enthusiastic graders about anything. It's a blanket statement, and some argue it's unfair, but they'll more than likely, if you give them an excellent and good, they'll say good. If you give them an A, B, C, they'll say B, because there's always room for an improvement, and in some people's minds, excellent or an A is not attainable. Between 2015, we had 90% give the city, the business climate, A or a B. This time we had 96%. But the key difference is the enthusiasm, the A grade, moving from 29% up to 50%, almost doubling. So in essence, the business community moved the city from about a B plus, a B to B plus average, to an A to A minus for a GPA, with flat out half of owners and managers rating the business climate as an A in the city. Now, what's the most serious issue facing their business? We didn't have comparisons going back before 2015. We asked the questions differently. So since 2015, there has been some changes. And the concern that we've seen going back from 2016 is evident now in the comparison to 2015 to 2018. There's been a heightened awareness across the state on property taxes since the legislative races in 2016. And it is the case here also. It's almost doubled from 22% to 38%. High rent and lease, growing concern, 13 to 24. Finding good employees, and we're going to see that there is a concern of about 1/4 of businesses in having the available employees that they need. Amount of competition stayed the same. Traffic congestion only went up 4 points. General economic conditions stayed the same, and the cost of doing business dropped. But as a concern, and they could say multiple, the fact that none hit 45 or 50% doesn't necessarily indicate that there's a major problem that needs to be focused on. I mean, really what the city needs to do, and I mentioned it in the previous presentation, it's really fine-tuning the equalizer and making sure everything is perfect, not replacing the equalizer and fixing something that's deficient. Now, what's the focus for the Economic Development Division of the city? And this was asked, they could say, should the city have a great focus, some focus, little focus, or no focus? Basically, the blanket statement to say is a majority of business owners think that the city should be focused on all of these things. There is a hierarchy on this. Retaining and growing existing businesses led the list still at 87%, no statistically significant difference. Building traffic infrastructure, that's a 14-point jump. And between 2015 and 2018, there has been a change in people's perceptions on infrastructure. And that goes to national discussions and focus on infrastructure, period, across the country. That now has trickled down to Eden Prairie business owners and managers. Improving communications went up 15 points. Investing in redevelopment went up 7. Recruiting new businesses went up 16 points. Attracting qualified workers and talent only went up 5. Communication between business owners, we haven't asked that before, but 71% indicated the city should be somewhat focused on it. Low interest small business loans and grants, 70%. Better training existing workers, 67%. So the top 10 have at least 2/3 of business owners and managers wanting the city to focus. And then going down the list, the development of workforce and affordable housing, still 63%. And expanding collaborative workspaces, a majority at 55%. So really what the business owners and managers, and this isn't that there's deficiencies in any of these, they want the focus to remain on all of these items. Now, do they have workforce issues? First off, we asked, do you have plenty of skilled workers for the company and the positions required for your company? 73% indicated they did. 26% indicated they did not. And it's split. There were 16% indicated that there was a difficulty in finding skilled workers, 10% difficulty in finding entry-level skilled workers. So about 26% of the sample is concerned on the quantity of workers. 62% of those that said difficulty, so that's 62% of 26%, about 16% indicate that the training is good, there just are not enough. And 69% indicated that it's already impacting their business. So it really comes down to, it's not a quality issue per se, it's a quantity issue at this point in time for about 20% of businesses. Now, a couple new questions we added, and this is we've explored this across the state with school districts and cities, and that's partnerships with local school districts, such as job training, mentoring, and those sorts of things. 94% indicate that this is a good idea for the city to explore with the local school district. Only 1% said it's a bad idea. They could say it was strongly a bad idea. Nobody offered that opinion. 49% said strongly it was a good idea. This is a very popular item across the state, and it trickles down to Eden Prairie also. Now, do they think that their business could benefit from this type of partnership? Well, almost unanimity said it's a good idea, and a flat majority said that they could potentially benefit from these sorts of partnerships. So it really is something with direction for the city to explore with the local school district. Do any of the following, have they impacted your ability to find qualified workers? Is it very much an issue, somewhat an issue, not too much, or not at all? Nothing raises above 50% as a major issue. What leads the list is the affordability of housing, with a total impact of about 1/3 of business owners indicating that it's impacting them, 9% saying that it is a very serious impact to them, and then all the way down to adequate amenities in the city. But nothing hits that 40 to 50% threshold, but a couple items to flag with the affordability of housing and the adequacy of transportation options. Impact of traffic congestion. Now, this is the impact of traffic congestion on their business, not on their personal lives. And so on this one, 14% indicated that traffic congestion was at least somewhat serious to their business, but 87% indicated it was not to or not at all serious. Very little change between the two surveys. Southwest Light Rail, a third at this point in time, and this is all theoretical at this point in time until it's operational, think that their employees will use Southwest Light Rail to get to and from work. Are they concerned about users being able to get from the Southwest Light Rail station to their final destination, to their workplace? Business owners and managers haven't really thought about that connection. Only 5% at this point in time indicate that they are concerned. 90% say no, they're not. Contact with City Hall. This has been pretty consistent over the decade, with basically 1/3 of business owners and managers saying they have contacted the city over the past year. 2/3 have not, and it averages out to just about once a year, maybe once every 8 months or so. Now, how would they rate the contact with City Hall? Once again, you have a very statistically significant increase in the enthusiastic rating. Overall, in 2015, 98% were satisfied. This time, 99% were satisfied. You'll never get 100%, I promise you that. But the very satisfied moved from 22 points, from 54 to 76. 3/4 are very satisfied with their contact, and that is counter to what we're seeing across the state. Oftentimes, familiarity and contact leads to less satisfaction, shall we say. The general value of city services, and this is kind of the key question, in my opinion, of where the rubber hits the road, because we saw that increase in the concern on property taxes. Does it trickle down then to the question, when you consider the property taxes you pay and the services provided by the city, how would you rate that value? It still nets out favorable, and it nets out the same favorable. 88% rated excellent or good, 12% only fair or poor, and nobody was unsure this time. So even if there is a growing concern, they see the value being provided, and it hasn't impacted like we've seen in other communities where as the concern heightens, it kind of clouds people's judgments on the services being provided by the city. Finally, are they satisfied with the decision-making process in the city? This is counter to what we're seeing over the past couple years, as there's been people are having a more difficult time differentiating between the ability to have a say and have their way, so that you can have an open decision-making process, but if the city or the school district or the government entity doesn't do what the resident wants them to do, they're dissatisfied. It's not about the process, it's about controlling the process. You're at the high now over the decade of 90% satisfied with the decision-making process in the city, only 5% dissatisfied. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council? Councilmember Narayan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation. Thank you. And this is the second time I'm listening to you, and sound like you had to listen a couple more times to really appreciate how great job the city is doing. Because one of the questions I had a few days ago was, sound like we are doing quite well in a lot of areas, and what are the key areas to work on? And what you said was, just keep it up, the good work. That was the hardest thing for us to do. So the question I have is the property tax. In survey, it shows 18 more concerned than 15. Did we increase the property tax more than the average, whatever it is?
Sure. Yeah, I can answer that. We actually, our increases have been lower than our peers, and also have been at or below the rate of inflation. Now, if we're talking about commercial property taxes, we talked about this previously, that we control only the city portion of the tax bill. And when you actually look at a commercial property, that's even less than with a residential property, because you've got statewide fiscal disparities program, that's part of it. So we're part of this tax base sharing program where 30% of a business property tax goes into a pool in the 7-county metro area, and then there's a redistribution back. And the city of Eden Prairie is the 3rd largest loser or contributor to that pool. So we spend a lot of time having to explain that the residential taxes are actually impacted by that as well. So it's almost like 20% of a business taxes are tied, property taxes are tied to the city's levy and budget. But I do know for this current year that taxes were approved on a $2 million commercial property. The city taxes are increasing maybe 1%, just more than 1%, and the total tax bill actually is decreasing. So the long answer to your question, Councilmember Narayan, but we have not seen any spikes or any larger increases in commercial property taxes. I think it's maybe a general perception.
Thank you.
Councilmember.
Thank you,
Prairie,
Mayor.
go ahead.
This is the second time I've had a chance to see the presentation, and it's kind of exciting to see that a lot of things are happening right. I was confused last time a little bit, and this was reinforced. This is a positive confusion, just so you know, on one point.
Fair enough.
It had to do with the business climate. We shifted in the A category, if you remember back now, 29% to 50% in, what is it, 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a serious jump. I know that combining the A and the B, you know, it's a little tighter. But that's, to me, is a significant jump that I can't wrap my hand around why. And I'm pretty tuned into the city. I'm trying to think, what would cause that kind of a jump in a positive sense? It's an amazing jump.
Absolutely. I think it's not only just the city itself. That's more of the global question. You're asking about the business climate in Eden Prairie, but residents or business owners and managers are thinking more global. And so we saw that when we would ask that across the state during the recession between 2008 and 2013, within the city, it might be fine, or within the metro area, it wasn't as bad as nationwide, but people's enthusiasm was less. So I think it's not only tied to their feelings with the city at this point in time, but also with their feelings about the overall economic climate. Now, I will put the caveat on, though, that this survey was conducted in November and December. And I'm pretty sure with the yo-yoing of the economy since basically the holidays over the past 6 weeks, that probably would dampen it a bit. But still, it's not just what's happening in Prairie, the business climate, but you can see the positive impact also when we get specific and ask about the city.
Okay, and that's where my confusion was,
Yeah.
because, you know, the way you explain it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there is, on this, and going to the property tax question also, this is public opinion and perception. I mean, basically, and it's not necessarily a fact check on, you know, this is tapping into their feelings sometimes, and, you know, obviously what they think also. And so all of these issues can be impacted by feeling also.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, I must say that this increase, though, in happiness by business about the business climate is partially connected to what I hear when I talk to them, you know, at chamber events or various things, that people seem to be very happy with how they're doing here. They're happy with the city. They feel like it's safe. They don't need to worry about their
Right.
employees going out to their cars at night. They feel that our economic development people have been useful. And I don't get as many complaints as I maybe got 6, 7 years ago. And you know, still some complaints, if only I could find a highly skilled whatever
Right.
they need. But they seem to feel like their employees like being here. A lot of them like living here. And that seems to have gone up over time just on an anecdotal level. So I'm not totally surprised to see it go up, and I don't know if it's all connected nationally with some of the local things that they talk about.
I'll just piggyback on that a little bit also. And for the earlier presentation, we had all the demographics up there. And I think it is important to point out that I believe it was 52% of owners and managers lived in the city, a majority. So that connection goes beyond just their business. It goes to the community. And when we do business surveys elsewhere across the state, across the metro area, that typically is between 33 and 40% of business owners living in the city where they own their business. So that connection is even deepened when you have a majority of them living in the community.
Well, thank you for coming out in the snowstorm tonight. I just personally really appreciate it because I made a personal appeal for you to come. I did want to add, just from a technical standpoint, that as you know, any given year is so susceptible to the whims of the year itself. Our survey was right after an election. The last one was 15. It was in an odd year. That dynamics, sample, population differences, all that can up and down. But over the 10-year period, on some of the key attributes, our trend was directionally up. And in statistics, that's a really important factor. So the idea that we are on the right path overall, rising, and that the business community continues to be happier and happier in general, directional trend with what the city's doing, is incredibly positive news. So I appreciate the work that Morris Leatherman does for us. You're a great company. We've got a long relationship with you. And again, thank you for coming out in this snowstorm tonight.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, the 6 of you, for, I guess there's 5, keeping me on track. Keep evidently getting excited about going through this agenda or something. So we are down to the consent calendar. I'll take a motion, and then I'll ask if there's any items that you'd like to question. So is there a motion for approval of A to C on the consent calendar?
Move the approval.
Is there a
of
second? Whoop, that's cut you off. Go ahead. You finish. Oh, she knows what it is. Oh, that's great, PG. Sorry about that. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, are there any items that you wish to question or pull off? Okay, seeing, hearing none, then all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So we have no public hearings this evening. So we're down to payment of claims. Is there a motion for approval of payment of claims
So
as
moved.
submitted? Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any items you wish to question or have staff respond to?
There is one that I would like to have staff elaborate on, and that's the payment to Southwest LRT. There's a large payment in there, and I think it would be good for the public to hear what's in that payment.
Mayor Kay, City Council member, I'll try to address that. So with the light rail project, there were a number of locally requested capital improvements that were included with that project. It ranged from decorative railing, decorative concrete for the bridge that's in the Purgatory Park. There was the catenary poles being upgraded to a higher decorative standing. There were the planter boxes, the landscaping, decorative street lights, Eden Road, the expansion of the right-of-way. The plazas were included, benches, irrigation. There were just a number of items that were not included in the base project that the city, and listening to the public, wanting a high-quality finished product, the city entered into the agreement with the project office to include those, where we would have to pay for them, have to pay for the design, pay for the construction administration that comes along with that. And so that agreement was executed a number of months ago. I forget exactly when. The payment that is on tonight's payment of claims is for the first installment of those locally requested capital improvements. There will be a second payment made about 275 days from now that will cover the remainder of those LRCIs, those locally requested capital improvements.
And are we going to get reimbursed for some of those through grants and things, or is this in addition to the grant money that we've received?
We would not get reimbursed by any grants. We do have the outstanding grant for the town center station, if you recall.
Right.
About a $6.14 million grant we received. There's a local match with that, and there's the potential that there would be some other agencies or partners paying for the local match. That's yet to be determined.
Okay, that's what I was questioning. Thank you.
On that point, hasn't the council seen most of those and approved most of those over the last year and a half, at least? So we knew this was coming. It's just always harder to see the amounts.
Yeah. Mayor Case, Councilmember Nelson, yes, I think we've done a number of workshops. We've passed resolutions that speak to all of these lurkies. So these are things that we have shared with the public, shared with the council as the design has moved through the process.
Good question. Any other discussion? We need a roll call vote.
Councilmember Narayan,
Yep.
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. We had no reports of council members, city manager, nothing. I believe we're down to Public Works.
Yes, Mayor Case. I will be speaking about two traffic issues tonight. The first is really a follow-up from a discussion that we initiated maybe 2 council meetings ago, where we were talking about the dynamic speed display signs. So tonight I just wanted to report and share some information on the types of signs that we currently have, and then maybe a plan moving forward. So to give a little bit of background, we have, the police department has a mobile speed display unit. It sits on a small trailer, a white trailer. I think it's got the speed limit sign on the top, and then on the bottom it has a radar, and it can dynamically show how fast vehicles are driving. Right now that gets deployed if there's targeted education. A lot of times it's just citizen complaints about speeding. It's a way for us to go out and do traffic calming, remind people what the posted speed limit is, kind of show them what they're driving. And it seems to be an effective tool. This unit does not collect any data of any sort, and it's reaching the end of its useful life. So we had it for a number of years. We were actually looking at replacing it sometime in 2019. Then we have a second type of a sign. It's more of our permanent installation. These are signs that are on posts mounted in the ground. They're all solar units, so they're not directly connected to the electrical grid, but they do much the same thing. It's got the posted speed limit, and then underneath it, the radar will tell drivers to give them feedback on how fast they're driving. These units also don't collect any data. We found that they are useful. I think studies show that they can impact driver speeds by reducing them 2 to 3 miles per hour. So not, it's significant, but it's just a good tool that we use to help with traffic calming. I think we have 4 installations. We have one on Dell Road, up in the north part of town, Park Knoll Park. I believe there's a big hill coming down. People tend to drive over the speed limit. We use this to reinforce speed there. We have one on Anderson Lakes Parkway as you come off of 169. Again, people driving 65 miles an hour hit a local road, need to be reminded that you need to drop down to the lower speed on 35 or whatever that's
30.
30. We also have one on Riverview Road, so much the same thing, just off 169. Driver feedback sign right off the exit ramp. And then our 4th one is on Homeward Hills Road as you're coming south from Pioneer. Again, it's a big hill. People tend to see their speeds creep up. So a good tool that we use, permanent installations. We don't move those around. And it's been kind of a pilot project for us. So we had some discussions with the police department. Our engineering division was also included, and we'd like to move forward with 2 things. And first is replacing that mobile speed display unit with a new one. As I mentioned, it's reached the end of its useful life, so we'd like to order a new one. It's about a $10,000 to $13,000 investment, depending on the features that you select. But we think that this next unit should collect the vehicle speed and vehicle volume data. We think that could be useful for, one, responding to citizens. After we put it out there, we know what people are actually driving. We can share that feedback with the residents. We could also collect that data if we're doing maybe a road reconstruction project or an expansion. There's some data there that might be useful for us. But we think it'd be a good tool in really knowing what's going on and then sharing that with the public. Secondly, we would like to formulate a policy for the permanent installation of the dynamic speed signs. So right now we've just kind of been testing them. If somebody calls, it looks like it's a good location, let's try it to see if they're working. So I think we're to the point where we do like them. We've received positive feedback from the public. They are about $3,000 a piece, so there is a little bit of a cost to it. But we'd like to formulate a policy that helps us determine where we should prioritize these, and it would look at things like the roadway classification. We look at, speeds that we're observing out there, traffic volumes. Is there a school nearby or some type of a pedestrian generator? Or is there trails in the near vicinity? So look at a whole host of those things to help us determine where would be the best investment as we move through the years, because I'm sure we'll get a number of requests for these. So, really tonight's just a report back of what our recommendation is. And again, it's to replace the existing unit, mobile unit, with one that does collect data, and then generate a policy for the installation of the permanent signs. And that policy would come back to a future city council meeting for your adoption, and then we can begin budgeting and prioritizing those installations.
Can we break your report up so we can have some discussion right now? With you okay with that? Okay, Councilmember Aho.
I think I know the answer to this, but I think that we'll probably generate a few questions about this. So when you say it's going to collect data, what you're telling us is just going to collect vehicle counts and traffic speed, but it's not going to collect like license plate data.
That is correct. We're not looking at any feature that would have that capability. It's simply volume and aggregate the speed data so we can break, what's the 85th percentile, how what percentage are driving 5 miles and over, 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. So no, it's no personal information, no license plate information. That's not the intent, no.
Okay, thank you.
I want to follow up on that. Does it, though, record the time that the speed occurs?
Yes, it would break down all of that data by time of day, day of week.
Because that's the piece that is powerful on two ends. One is that if we have a problem and it's happening every afternoon at 4:45, there's 7 cars going through because that's coming home from work or something, and they're going an average of 13 point, it's just so precise that a police officer could go out then the next week and sit there in an unmarked car and then be able to really make a difference. What was I going to say with the other side of that? I'll think of that in a second. I'm not sure. What I wanted to ask, though, about the policy piece is, could the policy include, for the permanent installation, could the policy include data collection by the temporary ones? So in other words, a piece of that would be we'd get all this data collected, and then that would go in with all the other variables and factors that you talked about. Could that be part of that?
Mayor Case, yeah. What our intention would be is to collect data, existing data, probably using the mobile display unit, which would collect the volume, the time of day, the speed, and all of that. And then that would be used at the matrix of prioritizing the permanent installation. And I want to be clear that our intention isn't that the permanent installations would collect data. We discussed that. We didn't feel that that data held a lot of value. Because it's pretty constant. The data that you see today is probably going to be the data you see 2 weeks from today.
Serving a different purpose, yeah.
Yep. So the data collection would purely be the mobile display unit, and that would likely be used in collecting the data to determine future permanent installations.
So I thought about my other side to it. The other side of the temporary data collection is to go back to a neighborhood issue or concern, or someone that had not a complaint, but a legitimate concern, and go back and with data be able to say this actually doesn't compare to these other 13 instances, or we only picked up 6 speeders over the course of 48 hours, or whatever. That data would be able to confirm that the problem is not, there's more perceptual and not the problem that maybe it looked like at first. So, I think that's incredibly valuable data to have as well. My only question along that line, I realize it's quite expensive, but in the course of those of us that went door-to-door campaigning this last time, I came across at least 3 neighborhoods, streets, that I do believe, just based on time on the road in the neighborhood, do have issues. So I just wonder, one, I guess we could keep moving and moving and moving, but particularly if we had several complaints pop up at one time, I just wonder if 2, I'm trusting your judgment on that, but originally when I was thinking about it and chatting with the company, what was it called initially that we...
Traffic Logics.
Traffic Logics, that's right. Representative out in LA, and I thought, he told me, and maybe he did, 5,000 to 7,000, maybe we're looking at different types of features, but it just seemed like city 35.2 square miles, that we might want to have two. But no, you've thought about that?
You know, we have talked about it. We don't right now feel that there would be a need for that, but I think engineering and police department work hand in hand on a lot of traffic issues. They meet frequently. I think if time dictates that there are more complaints, more concerns,
It's easy to buy another one.
it's
Sure.
easy to purchase, and they're not significant expenditures. There are things that we can budget for without a lot of discomfort.
And there's no vote needed on this because of the lower amount. So go ahead on your second bullet point.
I just had one
Go
more
ahead.
question on the
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
on the permanent displays. So those are
Let's
about
see it.
3,000 a piece. And what's the expected life of a product like that?
They are about 2,000 to 3,000 depending on the model. We've had ours for maybe going on 3 years now. I think the solar panel would be the first thing that might go out. I don't know what they advertise the lifespan of those. We have found that during the winter, when we have less sunlight during the day, and if we are in an area that has a lot of trees, they do go dark for a few weeks until the sun comes out. So, we knew that kind of going into it. But I would say 10 to 15 years. The life of the LEDs, the life of the solar are probably going to be the first components that go out.
All right, thanks.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes, I am very interested in you getting the kind in the first place that does the counts, does the times. I think that's a whole different issue, that if it's always speeding during rush hour versus speeding within a half an hour of high school being out, it's a different kind of situation. And I would like to get some more, preferably solar, for around the city where there's issues. I know where some of them are. One street I used to go down a lot, and it made you think, and it made you make sure that, your vehicle you had your foot on the brake going down the hill, because that was the only way to stay in there. And you saw other people saying, oh, you could just see it, because all of a sudden the lights would flash. So I think it's a good idea, and it makes it a little safer in some areas that people may not feel as safe right now, and some of them might discover that maybe they're part of the problem. So,
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question. This display I'm seeing here seems quite large. So if I'm driving, and if you're really trying to measure the speed, I slow down. So I'm trying to understand, how do you truly get the speed of a driver? Is that your concern? Second question is, I'm assuming that you will be measuring only one direction or the both direction. Let me ask a couple of questions, then you can answer all together. And the data part, how that data is it automatically uploaded to somewhere, and then you post analyzing those data and easily, or do we have to buy more software to do all the analysis? Okay, that's what I have.
Mayor Case, Councilmember Narayan. So to answer the question about directionality, most of the units that I've seen are one direction, so it's only going to measure the one direction. And your other question about, is it capturing actual driver's speed when they know that nobody's watching? No. Of course, if they see that, it's probably going to capture, as they're being reminded. When we're looking for true speed data, generally we do that one of two ways. It's with the road tubes that you see out in the road. Some people realize those are capturing or speed as well, so some percentage might slow down. And then on occasion, we've actually had people out with radars and sitting in an unmarked car and capturing that. So those probably get a more realistic measurement of speeds, but they're more expensive as well. Setting the tubes is quite an effort to go out, nail them down. You got to go back out and check them every day if you want several days worth of data, and then you have to go out and pull them out, download the data. So it's just more intensive. I think for the purposes that we're looking at here, I think the mobile display unit would work just fine. And then your third question about uploading the data, each vendor has a slightly different way of doing it. Some are just Wi-Fi, so if you have an app on your phone or you have a software program, maybe it's a web-based program on your computer. You can download that data. It wouldn't require any maintenance agreements annually or support systems for that. These are pretty elementary systems that they're using.
Thank you.
Councilmember Freiberg.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I got a question for Mr. Ellis, if I could, please. I also am pretty enthusiastic about the concept. I think it's a great idea. Something you mentioned, though, just a little concern. I'm wondering if there's an option that can be explored. The solar part of it. Big fan of the solar, that's fine. But you mentioned it goes dark for part of the time, which kind of defeats the purposes of what we're trying to do a little bit. I'm wondering, is there a combination that you can maybe explore the aspects of a battery backup to a unit, if there's something available? I would rather not see something go down, you know, because we're really trying to promote the solar aspect to start with. It's a great idea. Collecting data all the time makes a lot of sense. Going dark doesn't. So I guess I would just like to encourage if we can just look at some aspect that might just have a battery backup and just compare a cost if it is available. Thank you.
So the traffic logic unit that I looked at, and they had out actually in front of us, came with, you could either battery power it, solar power it, or wire it. You could do all three with the unit that I looked at. But again, I don't know if that adds, you know, another $1,000, but I would guess that most of them have a battery backup. So, good. All right. Any other discussion on that? No. Okay, Mr. Ellis, you have number 2.
Yeah, Mayor Kay, City Council. So the second item, traffic related as well, the city in collaboration with the school district are seeking to establish a new 25-mile-per-hour school speed zone on Scenic Heights Road near the CMS entrance, the only entrance, School Road. Also has a marked crosswalk at it. So the state statute does allow municipalities to establish school speed zones. We do have to follow Minnesota Department of Transportation's guide to establishing speed zone school limits, and it lays out some of the factors that need to go into a traffic analysis in determining that speed, and that includes looking at traffic volumes, roadway geometric, speeds, pedestrian crossing numbers, accidents, and a number of other items. So we've completed that analysis. And we are recommending that a new school speed zone be established, and that would be essentially from, I believe it's View Lane to an area that would be west of Village Woods Drive, and that would be one of those 25-mile-per-hour when children present signs like you see at all of our elementary school speed zones that we have for the other schools. The 25-mile-per-hour speed limit suggestion is based on an evaluation of the real-time 85th percentile speed limits that were observed in both directions over a number of days. MnDOT's guide on establishing speed zones limits how low you go on a speed limit. They like to see it between 10 and 15 miles per hour, no more than 10 or 15 miles per hour, below your observed 85th percentile speed. So the 25 would conform to that, and it would be consistent with some of our other roadways based on roadway classification. So to establish this, the City Council would need to adopt the resolution that's attached, and once that is done, we could sign it, and then enforcement could take place shortly after that. And I think with what we heard downstairs tonight on designing pathways and moving 6th graders now to this school in the future, I think this would be a prudent step for us to take.
Any questions or comments? Does this require a second reading? Does not.
Oh, it does not.
Okay. Yes. Oh, make the motion, please.
I'll move to approve resolution establishing a school zone speed limit along Scenic Heights roads adjacent to Central Middle School.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimous. I believe there's no other business before the City Council tonight. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.